Recording in progress.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Griffin City Commission Board December 9th workshop. We're going to begin by discussing proposed changes to operations and services of the Solid Waste Department.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Today. All right, I want to apologize in advance. I'm dealing with a double ear infection, so if you ask a question and I ask you to repeat it, it's because I cannot hear out of this ear. You should all have copies of the presentation that we're going to go over today. These are it's going to be a long discussion, as majority of the ones that I make before you guys are, so I apologize for that in advance, but we're going to cover a lot of ground. There we go. Okay. So I want to first introduce what we are now calling solid waste solutions. So if you recall, in March of this year, we made a proposal related to future yard waste. We had done an audit, just preliminarily looking at everything, considering what the future of yard waste was. Our current ordinance provides that residential service, including yard waste, is mandatory for all improved residential property, so that's single family and multifamily, with a few limited exceptions related to, I think, 4 or more units. We proposed that policy be enforced with a few limited exceptions, and the board consensus was to proceed with that proposal, but we also identified a lot of other inconsistencies in our solid waste ordinance that, from our ordinance to our operations, that led us to kind of recommend that we take a look at all of these other problems and then we present something more comprehensive to you all. Well, little did we know when we began meeting as the Solid Waste Solutions Committee, we were going to uncover a lot of other issues and really be presented with the opportunity to come up with a more efficient system, but it's taking a lot of work and a lot of time, a lot of manpower. So that committee was made up of employees from Solid Waste, IT, GIS, Customer Service, Code, and Management Services. I've asked that pretty much everybody who was involved in this process be over here, and with a few limited staff exceptions over there, everybody that you're seeing is involved in one way or the other with this process. It has taken a lot of time. It is on top of all of their other normal business and a lot of the other changes that we're making operationally right now. I actually just begged Claire not to quit. So not that she was interested in doing that, but just we keep adding more. So I really want to emphasize that this has been a huge collaborative effort and that they really need to be recognized, which is why I asked them to be here today for this. We together developed a list of common concerns and complaints, and that was really brought in by citizens and staff. And we developed a projects plan that we referred to generally as solid waste services. So some of this is internal operations and some of this is external citizen facing. So the goal of the workshop today is sort of introduce those projects to all of you, propose some changes and next steps. We're going to cover residential service and rate structure, including yard waste service, which will be bundled into that, commercial service and rate structure, recycling, franchising of private commercial collectors, and general operational changes and processes that we're working on streamlining and sort of improving how our solid waste drivers and the rest of the solid waste department can provide the service to the customers. So that includes looking at routing, methods for service confirmation, billing, and electronic payment options, specifically at the landfill and transfer station. A lot of this is still in progress, so I will note that if you have questions throughout, I may let you know. We're going to cover that later on in the presentation, but please provide feedback, ask questions as we go along, and we'll circle back to anything if we need to. We're also going to talk about solid waste technology and then get feedback from all of you. So I want to talk about our current proposed service options. So we have a menu of services when it comes to solid waste, and I personally think that's part of the problem. So I put everything in a list that includes residential curbside, yard waste, backdoor service, commercial curbside. There's a shared rate option, a residential rate option, commercial dumpsters versus shared rate, apartment rate, tiered system downtown, which is your tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 based on the type of business that you are, apartment roll-off services, piecemeal maintenance disconnect. So if a unit goes vacant, then someone can say, well, I want to go on maintenance disconnect just for the trash, but I want to make sure that I'm still keeping up with my power and my water. It makes it very difficult to track. Private commercial options, industrial, which we're really not covering all that much in this presentation, and then the opt-out completely options when it comes to yard waste and other services related to that maintenance disconnect. So it's too many options. If you think about every other utility department that we have, that's really not possible. You can add on, but you can't reduce or piecemeal your service, okay? So I actually liken solid waste more to telecom, and if you can imagine when, you know, you go to any sort of telecoms company, you say, this is the service that I'm looking for, they have packages for you, and you select that package, and you have the ability to add on, but you can't say, you know, I don't need, you know, 1 gig service, I need whatever half of this is. And if we don't have a package for that, we're going to recommend that you go into that other tier. I probably just botched that explanation, so apologies to give, but I hope that that puts you in mind of where we should be going with this, because that piecemeal service is how solid waste got into the knot that it currently is. It is like Christmas lights that have been in your attic, knotted up for years, with some bulbs working and some bulbs not, and we're going around twisting bulbs and unknotting as we go, trying to figure this out. So ultimately, that is lowering our quality of service, it's increasing inefficiency, and it's really hurting revenue. So as we're proposing these service changes, we want to emphasize a couple of themes. We are a combined utility. We have to establish that uniformity for each type of service across all of our utilities. And we believe that customers should be able to add on, but not opt out or receive piecemeal solid waste services. So the service types that we are recommending should be determined by the customer and property type. Is it residential? Is it commercial? And their commercial collection need. What is their type of business? What are they producing? And the other thing, kind of theme that we've come up with that we're saying over and over again, is that it's about collection, not container. And I think that has also been something that's been a big question mark for several years. So we'll get into more of what that means, but you're going to hear that repeated throughout this process. And in addition to the customer and property type question, we also need to take into account that Griffin, it can be a little odd. We have some development areas that are smaller than others. There are some areas that are extremely dense. And so we also have to take into account the actual space for our trucks to be able to get through, for our service to be provided, whether it be because of power lines or you know, a pad for a solid waste dumpster. So beginning with our residential service, we are proposing that residential service be applicable to single-family residences and multifamily residences with carts. Okay, so this is a package option, your residential service package. The exception here is multifamily units that qualify for an apartment rate dumpster and either do not have space for those dumpsters or they have unique property features that require carts. Most often, I did actually a ride-along with Carrie Stevens with code enforcement, and I found that there were some areas or apartments that really should have had dumpsters, and some of them had spaces for some dumpsters, some of them didn't. So they were required to have carts because they didn't have space. The ones that had room, there were some that were at the end of a dead end, and so they would result in massive amounts of illegal dumping. And so at some point in time, the choice was made that carts would be better for that particular area because of the unique feature, the property feature. So that would be an exception, and those would not fall under this tier because they actually qualify for our dumpster rate service, and we're going to talk about what other service would be applicable to them. So this would be a single rate for a comprehensive service. This is the biggest difference in this proposal, is that we're loading everything together. So it's not going to be residential service and then you have another line item for yard waste. It's a comprehensive service. This is everything that your solid waste, you know, line item, your bill where it says solid waste provides you. Residential curbside, 1 time per week. That's a 96-gallon cart. Recycling curbside, 1 time per week, which I believe is a 64-gallon cart, if I'm correct, Todd. Yard waste 2 times per month, bi-weekly. 1 pickup truck load per month at the landfill without charge, and 1 transfer station pickup truck load per month without additional charge. Okay, so that would apply to everybody who would fall under this residential, would be like our residential service customers who had that package. The optional add-ons are backdoor service. Right now, our backdoor service is listed as a completely separate rate. I think we're still working through what this would look like, but ultimately it may be better to actually have this listed as an additional add-on service so that there's a flat fee added to. And I think that that's easier for us to be able to determine what our cost of service is going to be. So instead of having $26 for residential service and then you pay $38 for backdoor service, we would have an add-on that would just be added to the regular residential service rate. That would be, again, easier for us to be able to track the actual manpower and cost of service for going and doing that backdoor service. And then special handling. So your special handling, you can do it upon request. As of right now, it's based on pile size. We are making some internal operational changes that are going to change how we bill for that, how that's calculated, how those requests are made. But ultimately, that would be an add-on that someone would be able to make if they have either a yard waste pile that is beyond the size that would be picked up as yard waste, or if they have any other furniture or other heavy load items that they would put at the curb and then have picked up. Opt-out would only be available if all utilities are on maintenance disconnect. So this is another big difference. We talked about it in March. It is very difficult for us to be able to track these individual maintenance disconnects. You have someone who says the property's vacant, I don't want to have to pay for trash service, but I want to keep my water and I want to keep my power on. They move someone in, and we are never notified that someone has moved in. And so that puts us in a position where someone could have for years been receiving residential solid waste service and never paying for it. It's very difficult for Claire and for customer service to be able to determine when that's happening, other than doing these full-blown audits to identify where that has gone down. So our recommendation is that you would have to disconnect all utilities in order to opt out. Our other rationale is that that person would still be eligible for that yard waste service. So a vacant property still produces yard waste, whether someone is living there or not. So they are still receiving a service even if no one is residing in the home.
On the backdoor service, what's like the percentage? How much do we have a lot of backdoor service customers?
I do not actually know the number, but I can get with Claire and provide you with the number after the workshop.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
While we're on that subject, how do we get away with charging an additional fee for backdoor service for handicapped people? Or those who can't push a can out to the street? So
it is still a additional service, and we do have to charge for that additional service. You've got someone who's getting out of their truck, they're going and they're rolling the cart to the front. That's manpower hours. We do have to charge for the services that we are providing. Otherwise, we're providing a preferential treatment we are allowing an accommodation, but that accommodation is being charged. That's the idea behind backdoor service.
And it's about $12 a month or something?
I think that the current rate is 26 for our residential, and I think it's 36 or 38 for backdoor.
Okay, so $10, $12 a month.
Could be wrong. I may have that in here actually. We will actually go over a comparison of rates for Athens, Clarke County, and you can see what their rate is for backdoor service. It's significantly higher than ours, and they do it based on the number of carts that they have. So their comparable rate would be the 96 gallon and 64 gallon carts, which would be your regular garbage service and recycling, and you'll be able to kind of compare, and our backdoor service rate is on that slide. So we can circle back to that. Don't let me forget. Yeah, so $26.87 versus $33.89 for backdoor service.
Right, so okay.
Yeah.
Were you able to find how many people we service? Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Okay. The next package that we want to address is apartment service. So this would be applicable to the downtown lofts apartments, multifamily apartments with centrally located dumpsters, or roll-offs, and qualified multifamily apartments with carts. So this was the kind of exception to the residential service rule related to carts that I talked about before. That qualification is determined by solid waste, and it is essentially intended where you have an apartment that either doesn't have space for a dumpster or has a unique property feature that requires a cart. The reason why those are carved out is because 9 times out of 10, when we're driving around, those are also your apartments that really don't fit the residential service where they're being provided yard waste. It doesn't make sense for them to receive that residential service. They don't fit in that package. If they were to call and say, look at my property, what package would I fit under? We would say you would fit under the apartment rate, but you happen to not have room for a dumpster, so we're going to give you a cart. However, you won't receive yard waste as part of that. So that service includes dumpster collection 3 to 5 times per week, cart collection 1 time per week, and that the rate of that is determined by solid waste. Landfill, 1 pickup truck load per month, and the transfer station, 1 pickup truck load per month. This was a kind of a discussion between all of us as to whether or not the transfer station and landfill, it's not really free, they're paying for it, but those dumps would be permitted without additional charge for those apartment rates. We ultimately decided that it makes the most sense for us to make that part of the residential service. For so 160 on backdoor service.
So Kelsey, when you say the service includes your apartment service, the landfill and the transfer station, so if I am an individual living in an apartment and I pay an apartment rate, I can take 1 load to landfill and 1 load to transfer station?
Correct.
But every resident can that has that service?
Yes.
Okay.
And residential service, your regular residential service package as
But
well.
the apartment service too?
Yes.
Okay.
The only exception to that is going to be when you have your dumpsters that are paid for by your landlords, which is really a separate kind of, it can potentially be a separate package, but majority of them are actually allowing that to be charged to those apartments. This does not include yard waste, regardless of whether they have a cart or dumpster, okay? And it does not include regular recycling. We're going to talk more about why, but we will be reconsidering this as our recycling program kind of develops, but for now, the customers will be referred to centralized recycling locations throughout the city. We would like to be able to place them at the apartments themselves, but the difficulty in that, and we'll go into more detail, is space. Not every apartment complex has enough room for even a dumpster, much less room for a separate recycling dumpster. The ones that have carts, I don't know if you've ever seen them, but the apartments generally have potentially 30 to 50 carts piled on the side of the house. Adding additional recycling carts on top of that is not feasible. It's not manageable. It not only would be unsightly, but I mean it would completely hinder their ability to move about their property. So our recommendation is that we refer them to those centrally located dumpsters. There's additional reasons for that, such as if you're in a recycling or if you have a recycling dumpster at an apartment complex, it's very difficult for us to manage and regulate who is not recycling properly, so there's an enforcement problem there. So we believe that from a recycling perspective, they more closely relate to the commercial option that we're going to be presenting to you when we get to the recycling section of the presentation. Oh, and special handling. So special handling is requested and billed to the property owner or property manager only. Okay, so they would not be able to make their own request. The rationale here is that they have the landfill and transfer station dumping options, but a lot of times that doesn't help. Some people just go and they put furniture right outside of the dumpster, or there's an eviction, and so the request will have to be made to that property owner or manager. If they don't have a customer service account with us, then at that point they have to pay sort of in advance of that, just like our vacant and undeveloped properties, so our vacant lots. Our next proposed service option is the commercial curbside service. So this is applicable to our commercial customers who have carts. This qualification is determined by solid waste. It must be accessible by our residential collection truck, so this is not available as an option for downtown. It is best suited for commercial customers with a collection need that is less than or equal to that of a 2-yard or 4-yard dumpster service, and or those who don't have room for a dumpster. So we have stopped ordering the 2-yard and 4-yard dumpsters. We still have some, but we generally like to refer people to the 6-yard. It's my understanding that a 2-yard picked up 1 day a week is the equivalent of 2 96-gallon carts. That's right. And so if you would qualify for a 2-yard one-time pickup a week, if our residential truck can get to you, then we would give you 2 carts instead of you paying for a 2-yard dumpster one time a week that would have to be placed. Another thing that I learned in this process is that a 2-yard, 4-yard, 6-yard, and 8-yard dumpster take up the same amount of footprint. They go higher, not wider. So the room concerns are the same for a 2-yard and an 8-yard. It's the overhead that really becomes the issue. So if you don't have room for a 6-yard, you're also not going to have room for a 2-yard, really. So The example of qualified business types would really be doctor's offices and law offices. We have some that are in the central business district that have this option. There are others that are outside of those zones, but solid waste ultimately determines whether or not they would best qualify for that, and we have to account for the property style and makeup as well as the collection need.
Kelsey, are those picked up the same as the residential, like once a week or?
My understanding is yes, because it's handled by our residential, like our cart pickup trucks. The rate is charged per collection though. So if you have 2 carts picked up 1 time per week, you pay that commercial curbside rate times 2. So you pay for each dumpster, each can that you have. Okay, so if you request 3, because we're only picking you up 1 time a week and you need 3, solid waste may say we need to evaluate whether or not we can place a dumpster here. If that's not feasible, then you have to go with this cart option and you're going to pay per cart. The service includes your garbage collection and recycling, because the commercial groups or commercial entities generally will have the ability to have those additional recycling carts without having the problem that our apartment units have, and we would still have the ability to be able to enforce whether or not they were recycling properly. And yard waste is not included, but it is collected only through special handling request. And that's really how it's supposed to happen right now. Yard waste is not supposed to be applicable to our commercial customers, but you may see, again, throughout the central business district where you will have yard waste piles that will be placed there because they've, hired a company, and that company didn't include the hauling service because they already pay for it, or their logic is that they already pay for it with the city. Ultimately, though, they're usually not actually paying for that, and so we're going around picking up that yard waste service. At this point, it would be cut off. Commercial customers would be able to make a special handling request to have their yard waste picked up.
Okay, so let's say you have a business Solomon or wherever, and a city tree falls or something and it's piled up. They just need to call and have it requested to pick up, or?
If it's a city tree, we generally will handle that. So that's kind of on our public works department or one of the vendors that we've hired, depending on how the tree was chopped up, to be able to haul that stuff off. But if they had a tree fall on their own property and they had to have it put down, my recommendation in that situation is that you make sure that your contractor is hauling it if you are paying for it. However, if you're not paying for it and you're talking about regular, pine cones, limbs, trimming, poplar trees or shrubs or things of that nature, they could put it out at curbside, make a special handling request, and then based on the pile size, that would determine what they would pay. That's how the fee is determined. Next service option is our downtown commercial service. This is applicable to downtown businesses that are not eligible for cart service. That is ultimately determined by solid waste. I would like to create a zone eventually for this. That's what Athens-Clarke County does. We looked at trying to say, let's make it the central business district, which is how the ordinance words it right now. It's too large, and it really doesn't capture all of the needs of the particular group that we're talking about when we say, carts aren't permitted and you've got to, share these dumpsters. We looked at the historic downtown, we looked at the special entertainment district, and none of those fully fit. So ultimately, we would like to create a zone for that, but right now, the determination's made by solid waste. We've already made that determination for several of the downtown areas, but there may be others where it makes more sense to have our commercial trucks, I say commercial trucks, but have our trucks come through to collect the dumpsters than it would the carts. So I don't actually have an identification of what that zone would be, but as of right now, you can imagine for all the downtown businesses that transitioned away from dumpsters and to carts, it's definitely going to apply to them. So our current downtown rate structure is a tiered system specific to CBD. Tier 1 is office, transportation, warehousing, finance, insurance, real estate, public administration, recreation, laundromats, and I apologize, I went in the wrong category. Arts, entertainment, recreation, public administration, and professional services. Tier 2 is your retail, healthcare, barbershops, car washes, dog grooming, laundromats, personal service, shoe repair, and places of worship. And then tier 3 is your manufacturing and food service. That's where your restaurants should fall. There is an additional kind of unspoken tier where if someone requests a private dumpster, that is something that they are able to get if there is room, and solid waste determines that there is room. Ultimately, if they want it to be private, though, they've got to put a lock on it. We are proposing a rate structure that is still tiered, but we want to make some modifications that are more consistent with what other jurisdictions are doing. So this would be, again, applicable to businesses in that downtown collection zone where no carts are permitted. Tier 1 would be businesses that don't serve food or alcohol, excluding places of assembly. I want to make sure to note that places of assembly is a more appropriate range or identification than places of worship because they generally have, similar trash service. Tier 2 is your places of assembly and bars or restaurants serving or open for one meal a day on average. And on average, by that I mean if they're open Wednesday to Saturday, one meal a day, they're open for one meal a day on average. So the additional closed days aren't going to put them in a different category. Tier 3 would be bars or restaurants that are serving more than one meal per day. The customers will be assigned to a numbered dumpster. We'll get into the labeling process for those, but I'm actually very excited about having a reference point for who should be dumping where. And private dumpsters will be available upon request or as required by solid waste, and the customer would be responsible for supplying a lock and must arrange for it to be unlocked when they receive that service. We generally pick up all downtown dumpsters 5 to 6 days a week. Yeah, and that's our current service. So they would receive that dumping service 5 to 6 days a week.
About how many customers assigned to the shared dumpsters?
In downtown?
Yeah.
That would be another Claire question potentially, but that is actually very difficult for us to be able to capture outside of the sort of like task force map that we previously did.
Right now, we don't know. That's
Yeah,
the problem.
that's the problem.
So we want to be able to answer that question, but we can't
Yep.
tell you right now.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and that's just gonna depend on location and what businesses are within that location. If you think about the sort of south block of Hill Street, those are either vacant, unfortunately, or a lot of non-food places. If you get up to the Cross Solomon Street and you have Corner Cafe and Angelo's and all of that, that's a lot more food service. So those dumpsters are going to have to be less people using them or less businesses using them just because of what the businesses are that are using them. So it'll depend, but I don't know that we have a way to answer that question right now.
Not right now. And on top of that, you have to keep in mind as well that just like with electric service, well, to a limited degree, there is a choice in using solid waste once you get to a commercial tier. So they could go technically with AmWaste or Republic or one of the other, solid waste services. Those don't typically go to a downtown area unless they have a core customer base, but we did find that there were a lot of downtown businesses that didn't pay for trash service, but we don't know who they're using because we don't have other dumpsters that are downtown. So that's something that we're planning on on figuring out as we go through this process, because ultimately everyone is required to have solid waste service, business, residential, they're required to have it, and we do have the right to be able to say, what is your solid waste management plan for your business, and to require them to provide us with proof that if they're not getting it from us, they're getting it from somewhere.
I think some of them have planned on using the trash cans that sit on the sidewalks, which is not a solid waste plan. So that's part of the problem that we're experiencing, is that once we find a business that's not been charged for trash, those are the ones that are throwing them in the just trash cans that are used for pedestrians, or should be.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're discovering a lot as we go along.
Glad y'all are doing this.
All right, and then the next service option is our commercial dumpster service. This is your outside of downtown service zone. This is applicable to commercial customers with private and shared dumpsters. The commercial service with the city is optional, but we do require the businesses to provide proof of that regular solid waste service, whether it's with us or a private contractor that is franchised. And we'll get into more of how we're going to track that and what that's going to look like, at least as far as our proposal goes. Solid waste is going to reserve the right to require that a customer have their own dumpster, and we're also going to reserve the right to require that they share. That is no different than what's in our current ordinance, but it's something that's a little bit of a point of contention, because some people are only paying a shared rate and they may be the only one utilizing a particular dumpster. Some people are paying, more for a dumpster that someone else who's in their area might be using if they're not telling us that they don't have, or if they're telling us that they have solid waste service elsewhere. So the process for determining that rate is that the customer is going to complete a request for service form. That's going going to be where they identify and estimate their collection need. We're going to have descriptions that are going to be provided to kind of help direct them to that best estimate. For example, a 8-yard 5 times a week is suitable for a restaurant serving, 2 to 3 meals a day. A 2-yard 1 time a week may be more suitable for a small office business. So we're going to have descriptions to kind of help them identify what their collection need is. And then solid waste is going to evaluate the description that they provide to us on what they are doing, how large their business is, how many employees that they have, and we're going to determine that final collection rate. And then solid waste is going to evaluate the location and determine whether or not the customer will need to share a dumpster. Those factors are based on the business type. So again, restaurants usually need their own. We need to prioritize space for restaurants to have their own dumpsters because they need to be collected more often. The room for the dumpster and whether the surrounding businesses are using a private collector. The reason why that matters is if you get behind some of these strip malls, it can be very tight, and there may be another private collector who has dumpsters that are placed that fit their trucks and are not sufficient for us to be able to get down through there safely. So we have to evaluate sort of what that space looks like, how can we get through there, how often do we need to be able to serve this area. If you have only one customer behind one strip mall that we're going to be picking up, obviously they can have their own, but if we're adding another one, it doesn't make sense, even if there's room, to add 2 dumpsters when we could just pick up one and require that they share if that's the only customer that we have in that particular area. Regardless of the size of dumpster that customer is sharing or the frequency of those pickups, the customer is paying the rate based on their identified collection need. This is where we start talking about that it's collection, not container. So if we have an 8-yard dumpster out there and it's picked up 5 times a week, the place of assembly that we are picking up from that says we have a lot of people who are coming in and out, we run events or we run community programs, so we need regular trash service during the week, and they also are sharing with a couple of different more smaller office type businesses. That office type business may only need a 2-yard 1 time a week. They're going to pay that rate. It may get picked up more often, but what they're being charged is their collection need. I would like, and we're still working through what this would look like for our rate structure, even if it is described as 8-yard 1 time a week or 8-yard 2 times a week, to provide sort of a collection estimate of what that need is, to emphasize that we're talking about collection, not container. We have to be able to determine the cost of service for the amount of trash we are collecting, because when we're making it about the container, we're potentially getting in over our heads and not properly charging for the amount of trash that we are collecting. It hurts the landfill, it hurts solid waste, so just generally, so we really need to transition away from thinking about this just as only a dumpster specific thing. This is a little bit different than what other jurisdictions do, with the exception of how they handle downtown. Again, Athens-Clarke has this system, but everybody's required to have their own dumpster. That doesn't necessarily work for us because of the makeup of our developed property. So we have to be mindful that Griffin is a little bit unique, and we need to be able to make adjustments for what we can do. The dumpsters will be serialized, so the customers will be assigned to a particular dumpster as well, just like they would for downtown. Recycling. So I'm hoping that this will actually be very positive for you all, because I think there's some misconceptions on both sides. So the current ordinance makes it where single family, it's mandatory for residential customers to recycle, and a container is provided to them. For multifamily, it's mandatory for them to recycle, but the owner is the one allegedly providing for that service and arranging for the collection, which they generally are supposed to be doing with solid waste. That's what the ordinance says. Commercial, it's mandatory recycling of OCC, which is your corrugated cardboard. They provide their own container and baler, or can provide their own container and baler, which in most cases outside of, I don't know of any where that would be feasible. And then the collection method has to be approved by solid waste. And then they're supposedly required to quarterly report the amount of OCC that is privately hauled or baled if they utilize a different private collector. So the recyclable materials that are currently in our ordinance are newspaper, aluminum cans, metal cans, number 1 and 2 plastic bottles, jugs, OCC, office paper, magazines, and junk mail. This is single stream recycling. Okay, that means that everything can get put together, and ultimately it is sorted out later, supposedly at the recycling center, and then put into different areas for us to make individual, calls for pickup to be able to recycle those items. The problem with that has always been manpower. Single stream requires a lot of manpower to be able to sort through, in addition to running the other machines. But I also want to kind of shed light on the fact that most people do not know how to properly recycle. It is not as simple as saying, this is plastic, I'm going to put it in this bin. There is a way that you properly recycle, and there is a very low threshold for error when it comes to recycling. Because in a single stream scenario, if I put in a piece of contaminated plastic that has not been recycled properly, I have ruined the entire load, all of it. It can no longer be recycled and is going to our landfill. So there's a very low threshold there. So our current operations, and this is where the misconception comes in, so we did suspend recycling collection operations and enforcement of that mandatory provision because of storage and operation issues following the transfer station fire. But since the transfer station has been up and running, since we got our baler and we were able to have the training completed on that, we have been accepting cardboard. So that photo there is just our industrial customers delivering cardboard to the transfer station, to the recycling center. That is baled, and we have the ability, there is a market for OCC, for cardboard, where we can sell it to the mills and receive reimbursement from the company that we contract with or that we request for that pickup. So that's a lot for just industrial customers. That's a lot of cardboard. When you keep in mind the potential or need for us to do single stream, I am not sure as of right now that we would even have room. And more importantly, there is no market for those other recycled materials. There's no market for aluminum cans. There's no market for plastics. You're essentially collecting it and spending money, to be able to sort it. But there's no ability to break even on that even. So that is our current operation, and that is the collection that's happened just in the last few months. So when do we start collecting the cardboard again? It was in September?
A couple of months, but that picture right there is current time.
Yep.
The bales are all the way around.
Yep.
Cardboard, all
And we accepted that I think it was September that we received our training. August or September. So that is just a few months of collection of that cardboard. So our recycling proposal is that we reduce the recyclable materials just to OCC, to that corrugated cardboard. That decreases the likelihood that we're going to have those errors. Cardboard is much easier to recycle. It's much easier to educate people on how to properly recycle. There's no market for those other recyclable materials. And we would require more manpower, more equipment, and more space than we currently have to actually be able to fulfill and utilize that single stream process for those other types of materials. And they also, again, increase the likelihood of contamination, and that's greatly reduced with cardboard.
So in regards to single stream recycling residential for just cardboard, is there enough market or enough product for us to recycle that makes justifying running a whole series
recycling
of trucks
service
and stuff, or are we basically breaking even?
Or
are we losing money?
So we would also be collecting from our commercial.
I understand the commercial
we'd
side.
have commercial.
I'm talking about the residential in terms of running 2 trucks down the same street
So
for limited cardboard collection.
as of right now, all I would be able to point to is what the current rate structure is for that. So I believe I thought I had it on here, but in August or it was in October. In October, the rate on the high side was 75, and we get 20 on top of that, so that's $95 per ton.
But again, I'm back to.
And our minimum ton is 40, and we have several here already. So from a residential perspective, I think if we're going to offer recycling service, that is the rate, but I wouldn't be able to tell you right now because we've never had accurate data before. So it could be something where we do it and we ultimately determine that the cost of service does not make it worth it. But as of right now, we actually don't have correct data because it's never been done correctly before.
Can you tell me how much running one truck to pick up the blue cans?
We would not even be able to tell you right now how many residential customers we have.
Okay, based on roughly 8,800 residential customers is a number they used to use.
No, it's past 10,000.
10,000, okay. Yes, sir.
Right now, we have 10,000 plus commercial customers. Everybody's required to recycle, but you get those blue cans, some of them mainly are garbage. So like Kevin was saying, so if you're going out and you're collecting that recycling, then you dump in some contaminated cans, that whole load was
That's
contaminated,
right.
so now it's deemed as garbage. So, to your point, is no, we don't have, it's not a high percentage because most of it's contaminated, picked it up. And then cardboard wise, no, it's not a lot of cardboard on the, curbside. Most of the cardboard is during your season, your holiday season, Christmas.
I understand, but what I'm asking is how much does it cost to run a series of trucks on the residential route to just flip blue cans? Are
We would
gonna
need
make-
to do-
How many
in order-
tons is gonna be collected, estimated?
In order to provide that, we would truly need to do a cost of service. And I think right now, even the numbers that we would be able to get you would not be accurate because ultimately, people have never been educated on how to properly recycle. The buy-in is gone currently, so we have to rebuild that. And I also think that because we've done that single stream in the past, and because we've never had sort of interdepartmental enforcement of that recycling, we don't know what the ability or capacity of our residential, customers is to actually buy into and recycle. It could be that if we go and we attempt to implement this, we ultimately decide that it is not worth it once we put everything together and we see what the buy-in is. But right now, I do think that it's worthwhile, especially with the market of cardboard, to be able to provide a recycling option to the customers. Just for us to be able to get a baseline, to get an understanding of whether or not we should continue to provide the service. But ultimately, we don't know, as of right now, there are a lot of big question marks and variables, not just related to recycling, but our regular garbage collection as far as rates go. So when we get to that point, I'm gonna show you where we're at and
What
the
I wanna be
information that
shown
we're
is
missing.
Of the rate that a customer pays, if we did away with that extra route, could we reduce the cost $2, $4, $6 a month?
The
If we're
problem is
having
we
to
can't tell
subsidize.
you. The problem, we have no idea because we don't know first of all, the recycling service would change, is our recommendation. So we can go back and say, okay, go back to the single stream recycling that you've always done. We were at maybe at best 15%. We're in compliance with actually things that we could recycle at best. I'm not sure that that's remotely accurate, but that's what we used to say. So even if you had 15% that were doing that, you could assume that 15% and maybe a little bit better would be good at cardboard because it's just one thing. But they throw a pizza box in there because it's cardboard, it's not recyclable anymore. None of it is. So we cannot answer. I mean, I can tell you how much it costs to run a truck, but as far as what we could make off it, we don't have a way to tell you. And that's the problem at this point.
Single stream, that's why a lot of municipalities have gotten away with it's gonna cost you. So if you do single stream, you're always gonna be out of negative.
Right.
Because there's no profit in it, you have to pay more to get the train.
So if there's no profit, why are we?
Because there is a profit in cardboard.
It's called profit in OCC, but there's no profit in single stream because you have to pay to get it.
I'm just talking about cardboard, that's all I care
No,
about.
no,
I just want
single stream. Single stream, you always have to pay, so you always gonna be in.
Yes, but there is profit in cardboard. So I think Kelsey's got that information at some point about what that contract looks like.
Yeah, I thought, yes, that's where it's at, it's towards the back.
Okay.
So, I just remember that. I'll find it. And we'll get to it when we talk about our internal operations. But, yeah, so in October, the price was $60 to $75 per ton. We get the high side rate, potential to receive $20 per ton added to that highest rate, so $95 per ton, with a 20-ton minimum per load, which is $1,900 per load. And that's a minimum tonnage, not, the maximum capacity for one load to be able to be provided. And that's our potential rate for reimbursement. I think that if we're going to do it, now would be the time so that we can train everybody consistently, we can see what it looks like. I think it's worthwhile to continue to consider providing the recycling as a residential service and see how far we can get with it. And if ultimately we need to, return and say, this doesn't work and we don't believe that this is worthwhile for our customers, then, we can address that at that time. But my recommendation is, at this point, is that we do attempt to provide that residential recycling service. We are asked about it enough that I do think that it's something that the customers want. I don't know whether or not they'd want it more than a reduced rate by comparison, but I do think that we are asked about it enough that we are living in a climate where some of our customers do desire that.
Would that mean the cardboard, obviously it has to be clean, it can't be a pizza box, food contamination, but does the residential, the homeowner have to put that in the blue can, or do they just condense it, sit it out to the side, or what, I mean,
It
does
goes in the blue
It goes in the blue
It
cart.
has, they have to put it in the blue cart, okay.
It does have to go in the blue cart. When it comes to, like our apartment complexes that we're referring to centralized dumpsters, we would make a transition to just these red style dumpsters at centralized points throughout the city. They are cardboard only. We have the ability to be able to lock them so that there's just that slot. So again, the likelihood of contamination is significantly reduced when we have the ability of just pushing the cardboard in there. So our apartment complexes would also be referred there. That would also be an option that we have for our commercial businesses. And your commercial curbside would also be provided with the recycling cart. So they would put theirs in a blue cart as well.
Gotcha.
And because we've never done this in this manner before, we've talked about, I guess I'll go back. So in addition to education, we want to create a task force made up of solid waste collectors and code officers for enforcement. So that's going to be similar to how we do our current sweeps. I would love to create an incentive where it's not just people, where we're citing people who are not recycling properly, but where we have the ability of doing some sort of swag delivery to either a customer who participates in a social media campaign with relation to solid waste or recycling, or where our collectors are going and knocking on a door and saying, you recycled, here's this piece of Griffin swag or solid waste swag. So that we've never attempted to do any sort of program before to that volume alongside enforcement with code enforcement, and that's an option that we want to consider.
Kelsey, what's the percentage of residential recyclables is contaminated?
We don't
The
have
other
that number.
85%,
Yeah.
if 15 was good, 85% is bad.
And you're
But
talking.
that's single stream, that's the five things we used to say you could put in the can. If you're saying just cardboard without food on it, that's much easier to teach.
And
So we don't
cardboard
expect
without
to say
food,
that.
you don't have to worry. With plastic, you've got to clean it out. I mean, there's a huge threshold of error. I will tell you, I have attempted to recycle properly, and I'm pretty sure I have failed, because then I'll see a new rule that I didn't know about what I'm supposed to do with it before I'm putting it into the recycling bin. I think that reducing it down to cardboard is going to increase our likelihood of getting compliance and getting more usable loads, because sometimes I think people have the best intentions and then just didn't know how to properly do it.
The stickers that go on the recycle bins now, that tells you what is and what isn't. Have we considered making them new ones?
Yes, if this is adopted, we would, if the proposal is adopted. Because right now, it's single stream, so we do accept those things, and that's what's listed on there. So this would reduce our collection material just to OCC.
And everything has to go into a bin.
Yes.
So some lady who buys a 85-inch television
It's gonna be tough.
and puts a cardboard out there, she ain't putting it in no bin.
Well, we do
They'll have to
have
break
the
it.
other, again, the centrally located dumpster locations that have the larger slots that have the ability to be able to recycle that. And if we see it in your regular garbage can, there's a potential for you to get a warning. That's the enforcement aspect, that, hey, this is recyclable. This giant box doesn't fit in your 96-gallon either. We're going to be able to tell that you didn't properly recycle it. You need to go, and here's where you would take it. So we're recommending referring the apartment and commercial customers with dumpsters to centralized recycling containers. We want to talk about potentially a pilot program where we're incentivizing the commercial collection through some type of rebate. We're still exploring that and seeing whether or not other jurisdictions have done it. But ultimately, everybody who's sort of on that dumpster tier would potentially have the ability of getting a rebate on that commercial collection based on our revenue at the end of the year from that. And we are recommending expanding the mandatory recycling to include commercial once we have that community education and buy-in, and that would need to be developed both for residential and commercial. And we're also recommending that the commercial collectors that are private be required to provide OCC recycling to any of the customers that they serve within the city limits. So what I'm talking about is if you hire AmWaste and you receive, as a commercial business, your garbage service from them, as part of the franchise arrangement that we're wanting to start, they would be required to show us proof that they are offering recycling service to those customers, so that you couldn't just get around our recycling requirement by retaining a private company, they would still be required to at least offer it. And then yard waste and special handling. So this is more in relation, I talked about how it's going to be loaded in and put together with the actual rate for residential. Right now, we outsource our yard waste and special handling to a contractor. That original contractor was bought out, and that has led to some difficulties with regard to enforcement of our contract. It's led to some communication issues, changes that continue to happen where we sort of just feel like the stepchild that's kind of getting shifted around. We did meet with our current vendor several months ago and demanded solutions to some of the complaints we were getting from all of you, as well as our citizens who were calling. Those complaints were inconsistent pickups, a need for service confirmation, or an explanation for why a certain pile was not picked up if there was an error in how it was put out to the road, and our request for a new contract so that we could have more enforcement mechanisms here. We received some helpful things, and we still had enough communication gaps that at this point we are recommending that we put out an RFP for a new yard waste and special handling contractor. Our current contractor is going to be free to be able to, make a proposal, but we would like to establish expectations through that RFP based on what we have learned through the failure of our current service. So we want a consistent pickup schedule, both for yard waste and special handling, following the same route and schedule, ideally the same schedule as our residential solid waste service providers. So that way, there's no question, our customers aren't seeing them off on one street and picking up one side of the street and then another day picking up another side of the street, and that happens on a Wednesday when their regular garbage day is Monday. There should be consistency for when they are getting that picked up. So if that is feasible, we're putting it in there, and we're going to let the contractors tell us whether or not they can meet that demand, meet that obligation. We want service confirmation, so we want to be able to have a login to whatever service they are using to be able to determine whether or not it was actually picked up, and if it wasn't, why it wasn't picked up. And we want a reasonable special handling payment structure that's reasonable for both citizens and for solid waste. So right now, it doesn't matter how large the load is. I think we only get $5 per special handling pickup, no matter what. So even if the smallest minimum charge is $35, even if the pile size is large enough that it would be $100, we're receiving $5 of that. So we're gonna put our feelers out. We're gonna see what the standard is. I am fairly certain that is not the standard, but we'll see what people propose and be able to put that before you and say, this is what we've been presented with. I personally think that having a new provider is going to solve a lot of the citizen complaint problems, and I think it's also going to show that we mean business when it comes to how that service is provided to the citizens. I would love to be able to provide an online schedule where someone can go and see whether or not, what days they're supposed to be picked up. It's just about organizing that. One of the issues we're going to have, and why we haven't put that out yet, is that we need to establish our routes. And we have some internal operational things that we need to figure out before we can even put out an RFP to tell them, here's how many people you would be picking up from, and here's the schedule that we have the expectation of you meeting. So those internal operational things will need to be fixed before we can proceed. The next recommendation is a franchise program for commercial collectors. So currently, private haulers have to register and be approved by planning and development. There's a $150 fee for that registration. That includes a $50 admin fee for planning and development to review that application. Generally, these approved haulers are intended for C&D. This is what we require, that you show that you're using a private hauler if you're demolishing a building or doing any sort of residential rehab that's going to produce C&D waste. There are commercial collectors that are operating within the city that serve our commercial businesses, and they're providing regular garbage service. So this is not a C&D hauling type of scenario. This is where they're going and picking up commercial solid waste that's produced by a business. We are proposing that we establish a franchise program whereby those commercial collectors would be required to register annually at a rate of $150 and pay a quarterly franchise fee of $1.60 per customer per month that they are serving within the city limits. They would have to provide quarterly reports on their revenue and the customers that they serve within the city, and they would have to agree to utilize the transfer station, because according to our ordinance right now, all solid waste produced within the city is supposed to go to us. It's supposed to be disposed of in at our landfill and transfer station. And they must agree to provide minimum services that we require. So that would include the recycling service component that I talked about a little while ago. Next, I want to talk about rates. I have some preliminary things that we've talked about with Todd and with Claire, trying to compare what we currently do, and we were potentially going to propose some increases or some changes. But I do think that that's premature at this point, because we have a lot of questions that we need to answer internally through our internal operations projects before we're able to determine where to go. But our rates at this time, to put it into perspective, it's very difficult to receive a comparison for rates when it comes to solid waste, because majority of the other jurisdictions are contracting out for their regular garbage collection to a private collector. So the same thing that we do for yard waste and special handling, other municipalities do it with regular garbage. The most comparable to us is going to be Athens Clarke County. So they do provide all of these services. Todd has a great relationship with Suki, with Athens Clarke, and they have had numerous conversations as we've been going through this process of what they're doing and how we can improve. And you can see right off the top, a 1 yard per week, a 2 yard with one pickup per week in Athens Clarke is $150, and for us right now that's $56.27. Outside of MCI increases that are incremental, we have seen no increase really in the last 5 years with regard to these rates. I think that the cost of service is likely not that different between Athens Clarke and us, but I cannot provide you with certainty on what that actual cost of service is yet. Some of our rates have changed only as little as $4 since 2020. And obviously a lot of things have changed since then, a lot of costs have changed since then, and solid waste has sort of stayed stagnant. And that's really a theme, I think, that solid waste is really operating a 20th century operation when it comes to technology, when it comes to the tools and resources that they've been provided to be able to provide a quality service. And we're working on curing those issues, but I think that on top of that, we have to look at these rates and consider whether or not what we're providing is going to work for them to be able to provide that efficient operation that our customers and you all expect. Okay, I was on a different slide. So this is actually for residential and backdoor service, so I put the comparison here. So Athens Clarke's, they have a breakdown of the different cart sizes that someone can have. Ours would actually be more comparable to their 96-gallon and 64-gallon option, which is the second to last on their chart. If you look, I believe it's $78.55 as a monthly fee for curbside, and then the backyard service is $111.55 compared to...
Could that be backdoor?
Yes. Compared to our $26.87 and $33.29. So we're talking about a radical difference.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I know that's why I'm hesitant to propose anything at this point, because I do think that there needs to be a rate study. As of right now, a rate study would be inefficient because we have, it's bad information in, bad information out, and we're going to talk more about why that is in a little bit. So we are still generating that, but one of the difficulties if we were to propose something and you guys were to adopt it, is the implementation versus the effective date. So if we were to proceed with changing sort of the service options and pulling out yard waste, we would actually have to go account by account to be able to do that. We'd have to work with Cogsdale to be able to do that. It's a lot of manpower hours from IT to be able to work with our contractor to remove those values and update all of the other items that we have. In addition to that, we have to be mindful of the MCI adjustment coming up, so you would end up duplicating work if we do this too soon. And in many ways, this is going to require additional account audits and customer notifications to be able to inform them, because some of them are not currently being charged properly despite receiving a service. So we want to make sure that we're notifying people. We want to make sure that we're doing this the right way, but some of this is going to be starting from scratch. And it's a big undertaking for everybody who is kind of back here, who's assisted with this so far, but we have a lot of work to do. So again, eventually I recommend doing a cost of service study, but right now I think the benefit of that would be lost until we fix these issues that we're discovering through our internal processes and projects. So as proof of this, we've really even had difficulty in running models. I wanted to be able to provide numbers to you today, to provide you with an estimate on how much revenue would change if we were to be able to do this addition of yard waste with the change of services that we are currently proposing, even if we were to keep mostly the same rates that we have right now. And we can't run those models because the current system has been so piecemeal that it is impossible to tell whether or not someone is actually paying the correct rate just by looking at the account. One of the other problems that we've discovered is that Cogsdale uses location IDs. Our drivers are using sort of colloquial addresses. Many of you may know, you may have a address in the tax assessor, but the property owner or the tenant knows it as a totally different address. We are talking about two systems that do not speak the same language. And we are having to go through and do that cross comparison so that we can load all of this information into GIS to get closer to where we need to be to provide you guys with those models. But that is in part why it's taken so much time to even get to this point. So these are the internal operations and projects I've been talking about this entire time. This is how we get from all of the issues that I just described to a place where we can provide an efficient quality service that is not at a net loss. So we want to do service confirmation and digital route creation. One, our routes need to be more efficient. And two, we want to be able to explain to customers why something wasn't picked up. We want to be able to hold our employees accountable if something wasn't picked up, or hold our citizens and customers accountable if they weren't abiding by a rule that was set and therefore it prevented their garbage from being picked up. So we have obtained additional Samsara cameras and equipment that is currently being installed. The next step is going to be configuration of workflows and driver training. This is going to assist staff in getting the data that we need and the footage to be able to determine whether or not that service was missed, or maybe if it was yard waste, the pile size was too large. That's the expectation we have of our contractor. We want to have that same expectation for our drivers, that we can look at it and say, why didn't you pick this up? We have also demoed a few routing systems, and we ultimately decided that Samsara's new service feature had the potential to provide what we were looking for at a reduced cost. It's a little bit more basic, but I think it's going to get the job done. But this has also been a major collaborative effort. So we have a basic map for Monday's route that has been created, and IT is currently working on Tuesday. Commercial dumpsters are being identified so that we can determine who we are actually servicing versus what is a private dumpster out there. They're being tagged, and that's being provided to GIS for mapping so that we can, determine, again, a more efficient route to be handled so that we're saving money on gas. You're reducing your safety and from a liability perspective if we're not on the road as long. And we have had to cross-reference those accounts that I've been talking about. And so Monday, that map being created has now been sent back for some additional changes. The hurdles here are Cogsdale utilizing those location IDs, the fact that the addresses are not matching, and we're having to cross-match across those systems and really build a data set that's never existed before. Additionally, we have found as part of that process billing and account corrections that need to be made. This is before we even make any of the suggested changes when it comes to the services that we have proposed for you today. So services are not being properly billed. We discovered that there are a substantial number that need to be changed, and after working with Claire, it's become obvious that we would benefit from a full-blown residential audit where we're laying eyes on the actual properties themselves. In the past, this was really done with an eye towards yard waste. That was the primary focus, but we really need to evaluate with our new service descriptions, our proposed service descriptions, and our new processes that we're putting in place as well. Planning and Development is currently completing their housing study, and there is data that's been collected through a format that's been created by Bradley, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to actually use some of the data that's been collected to make that audit run a little bit smoother and run faster, so that we're laying eyes on all of the structures and getting an idea of what units are there and what accounts needs to be connected to. We are also looking and have already trained on pre- and post-trip inspections. Again, this is a safety feature. This is about making sure that our equipment is appropriate for the road so that we're reducing the amount of trucks that we have down. This has been created in Samsara, and it's going to allow our drivers to be able to do this on a tablet, and I think that training happened on Friday for solid waste. We also want to be able to track extra solid waste services. So this is your special handling orders, your roll-off orders that can be, made with solid waste. Currently, this is handled through email, and it has resulted in a lot of delays, a lot of confusion, and a lot of additional billing errors. So planning and development is working with IT, or worked with them for the selection of OpenGov and OpenGov software, which will actually be on the agenda for tonight. That software was originally demoed specifically with an eye towards planning, licensing, code enforcement, and nuisance case management. But there is a forms feature that IT realized has the ability to be able to be used by other departments, specifically when it comes to telecoms and solid waste, to bridge the gap between when a customer is coming into customer service and requesting service that may not be a part of something that's regularly billed. So if you're coming in and you're wanting to order a roll-off, for example, then they're going to call solid waste and get with Sue. Sue's going to, make the report and email that to customer service to get put on a bill, or we're collecting payments if they don't have an account and it's going into QuickBooks and then going to finance. It is a mess, and it took us that long to figure out how to even, go about creating a solution to that problem. So that system is going to communicate with what we currently have. It will be able to integrate with our app so that the customer is still making the request through the app. They're having a one-stop shop, and I think you'll see this goes with our operational changes that we're also proposing tonight. With us being a utility service, you should be able to go to customer service and receive something comprehensive. Go to a one-stop shop instead of having to be referred around to different places. Next is the solid waste service contracts. So again, the organizational changes that we're proposing tonight are going to facilitate some of the proposed service changes we are making. People should be able to go to customer service to have their needs met. Right now, telecoms and solid waste are kind of separate and apart because of their menu style service, and because you really have to evaluate the needs of the particular property, the potential install, whether or not there's room for a dumpster. They're similar in that way that you really have to evaluate before you can determine a rate. But ultimately, they shouldn't have to go to customer service to create one contract and then go to either solid waste or telecoms to create a totally different contract that's held by a different department. So IT and customer service have met, and they plan to utilize that OpenGov software in addition to all of our other additional service requests for handling this customer, a comprehensive customer service contract. Again, this is going to benefit all utilities. It's not just solid waste. I think this form has the potential to also improve the efficiency in customer service. Once the new rate structure and service levels for commercial and industrial are finalized, we will also need to consider how best to market solid waste. We haven't really looked at their utility from a key accounts perspective in a broader way, but we do actually have to compete with other private contractors, and we need to look at how to best do that, how to market them. Our other project, and this one has become a doozy, I would have never expected it, is the proposal that we go cashless at the landfill and transfer station. So they are more vulnerable than most because of their location. We have safeguards in place because they have cash and they handle cash. But the goal would ultimately be to remove all of that vulnerability there. It also increases the efficiency because they sometimes have a line all the way, out to the entrance for people who are wanting to get in. And we're potentially losing revenue because sometimes we have to tell people we only accept cash, and they leave and they never come back. I personally think that also increases our rate of illegal dumping, because if I tried to come to you and I couldn't pay for it, I'm going to go anywhere along that line and I'm just going to dump it out instead of having to go to an ATM, because time is money for them as well. So we have fiber out there now, and that has been dealt with. But the issue now is that the scale software, our point of sale software, which is PC Scales, we would have to purchase an additional software license to be able to take these digital payments and load in the customers. There's also the additional problem that our landfill attendants can't be typing in a ton of customer information, the same amount that a customer service agent would have to punch in to load that customer into the point of sale system, and that's required. So we're exploring other options that would reduce the amount of inputting that they would have to have. But right now, the software that we have, the customers that we have inputted, it may be, John's red truck is what is listed in that customer base. That's got to be resolved. We can't continue to operate that way. And we're looking into the other options, but the first that we considered and hoped to propose just ended up falling through and wasn't what IT wanted to proceed with. So more on this.
Wouldn't most of our customers, though, you would initially have all that input, but aren't they mostly repetitive or not? No.
There are some that are repetitive, and that's what I mean when you have, John's red truck and they're loaded in, but we don't have the actual payment service portal or like module to be able to take that through that point of sale. And if we were to get it, we would have to add that component on. The cost was not worth the kind of effort there that would be required, not to mention you can't, even if we were to try to import that data, I don't feel comfortable with doing an invoice and a receipt that says John's red truck on it. Sure. So we've got to explore something that's more efficient and that actually functions and works. There are other landfills that I think recently just started taking payment, so we're potentially looking at a different scale software that would allow for the swipe only, I think is what it's called, the swipe only option, blind swipes. But apparently in the IT world, everybody is moving away from that in favor of something that is actually more customer specific, so that they can track it. All right, so recycling contract. So we obtained 4 quotes or proposals from contractors who could pick up our baled cardboard from the transfer station to sell it to the mills. This will allow us to generate revenue. There is a market for OCC. We have identified a preferred vendor, and we're currently working with them and hoping that they'll, provide an actual contract to be able to proceed soon. We are looking to do a live load with them, which is where we dump it, but we don't have a contract. It's sort of a one-off, like come pick it up, now, so that we could actually clear out the space and be able to take more while we're waiting on that contract to go through. So ultimately, we would have a recycling contract so that we could have more consistency and kind of know and build up an understanding of how much revenue we could generate from recycling on a monthly or quarterly basis. And lastly, I know this is a lot, but I do want to emphasize that this is a work in progress. We have just really beat our heads against the wall on some of these issues, trying to figure out how to go about doing this without breaking the system that we currently have. Ultimately, there will be some uncomfortable times. I think that we will have complaints if we were to implement this as we kind of go through fixing this process. The one thing that I would like to request of all of you is patience when it comes to this. We were just talking about it this morning that, with IT, every time we go and we try to fix one portion, we're finding more data or more issues that we need to work out. And we are moving forward, but it is inchworm pace. And if we rush it, so many of these things are layered on top of one another. So even, like I said, getting a new yard waste or special handling provider, if I want to put out an RFP, I need to be able to give them, our route, I need to be able to give them a list of our customers in order for them to produce a comprehensive rate, and I can't do that right now. If I put out that RFP too soon with inaccurate data, I get a bad service out of it. And I think the same thing can be said for kind of the rate study that we were talking about. We have some internal information gathering things that we need to do. As of right now, our current ordinance, does provide that yard waste is a mandatory service. And when we have found issues or errors as we've been going along, we've been correcting under our current framework. When that happens, we're drafting letters and saying, hey, we've discovered that you haven't, paid this service. So that will be adjusted on your next bill so that there's an explanation. But we're doing that as we go along while we're working on all of these other projects, and they all take a substantial amount of time.
And just to clarify, when we say adjusted on the next bill, we're not back charging anybody for services that they have received for years. It's just, hey, going forward, you will see a yard waste service on your bill, or vice versa, we can't actually provide you yard waste service, and so we're going to be removing it from your bill. But really, to summarize all of that, which thank you, Kelsey, I know that's a lot of work, and thank all of you, IT, customer service, solid waste, GIS, player, as you can see, I hate that we still don't have as many questions as we would like to after 9 months of doing this, but it's untangling that knot. So really, to move forward and untangle it any further, to be able to provide those answers, we need answers to 2 questions today, from what I can tell. We need to make sure that you are okay with us combining residential service based on what a resident is, which is you have a cart, your residential service, with the exception of the apartment things that Kelsey mentioned, so that we can look at that rate study, decide who's residential, and move forward with that proposal. So if everybody is okay with that, we can move forward.
Everybody good on that?
Good.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And the second is recycling. Do you want us to move forward with that contract for cardboard and make that mandatory recycling as we do, as our current ordinance says for single stream, where it's just cardboard, so we can determine if it's profitable, or do you want to do something else?
So my,
Go ahead, go ahead.
so my frustration with recycling. So these numbers here, if you could collect 20 tons a week from residential, you would only bring in at $1,900 a payment, less than $100,000 of revenue. And so if it costs us $500,000 or $1 million to do that service, I'd rather scrap recycling. Maybe we refocus on yard waste internally. It's about financial accountability. So to feel warm and fuzzy to recycle cardboard, but costing us $500,000 or $1 million doesn't make any sense to me. And I'd rather give the citizens a reduced rate on the cost of providing the services.
I don't want us to spend more for the operation, but based on what Kelsey said, the citizens feel good about it. It's green, at some point. Is there another option though? Just, for instance, we keep the option for residential, but do we have to pick that up? Can they go drop that? Or is there another option for them?
You could make it where it's no longer mandatory, and remove it from the ordinance, but you're really saying you're not gonna provide that service anymore. It cannot be a 510 Crescent wants it, but 520 Crescent doesn't, and
Right.
540 Crescent does, because you're still gonna run that same truck, and you're still gonna run it the same route. So you would have to say no longer mandatory. If you want to recycle cardboard, you go to one of these collection centers, centralized collection centers.
I mean, I think when the idea came along, I was newly resident here, it's recycle, it's your duty, but things have changed, we don't have the market for it, and you've got the space, and then, so obviously if cardboard is it, I'm just thinking about myself. The only time I have cardboard is after maybe one of the kids' birthday parties or Christmas, or you get a big TV, but how often is that? I mean, I don't know. I'm just wondering about the load and how the demand will be for such a service. But I don't want to spend $1 million running a service that's, I think, for the greater good, citizens really wouldn't ever recover any benefit as a whole, but that's just.
Do we have any way of doing a survey of our, and I hope I didn't miss, because it was you talked for a very long time, Kelsey, so if I missed something, please forgive me. Do we have a way, or have we surveyed how much cardboard is being put into our dumpsters currently?
Well, don't forget, a dumpster and a cart are two very different things. So
Okay.
a dumpster would be more your commercial, your carts are your residential. I don't know that we've really looked at that specifically, Rico or Isaac, or, so I mean, we can do that for a little while, but you're still not gonna really know. Right now, a lot of our citizens and customers know we can't recycle. We couldn't recycle because the recycling center was down.
Right.
So if you tell somebody we're going to recycle again, I just don't think you're gonna get an accurate number or summary of what is currently being done versus what could be done. We can do that, but I don't know how helpful that's going
Well,
to be.
I was listening to Commissioner Murray. One of my roommates at my house get a package from Amazon every day. So I got cardboard boxes every day to put out, because that's what they do. And it's, so to some that say, for me, I don't get anything probably once every 2 months that's in a box. But people, and a certain person that lives with me gets one every day.
Your roommate.
So, and that could be for somebody else too. So I don't know how that goes. I mean, the majority of the people, is it enough people that's getting cardboard that this is a good idea?
Well, not just cardboard, but corrugated cardboard. So I can't
Corrugated.
recycle my shoebox I got yesterday, but I can recycle the box that it came in.
Yeah.
Oh, your husband got one of those friends, those roommates too? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But can you put red containers in different places where people can just take their box? I mean, the cost of providing this service, and that's why I asked, how much does it cost for us to run a route with trucks and employees and everything else to maybe, and I think that's, maybe make $100,000 to me is, it's like opening up Pete's pool room and thinking you can make money on it. I learned there was no way to make money without charging excessive amounts. And could we reduce the rate that we charge our citizens in terms of their solid waste bill? Or do we go into and take over, we do this RFP, do we take over the yard waste business and do it effectively and better?
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
When we started with recycling, we were all like, oh no, this will never work. And we fought it and did everything. But staff, it was a recommendation that staff brought to us, and that was what was happening. And we did very well in recycling till everybody else stopped doing well. So it was not just us. I'm gonna talk about me. I have no knowledge about what you're talking about. And that's why we have y'all, you know. So for me, whatever the recommendation is, I know now what I'm sitting here thinking, well, how long is it gonna take y'all to get to the answer of whether or not, you know, of what we're gonna make, of whether or not we're gonna make anything. But I'm willing to ride with you, you know, because that's why y'all are here. So I'm not up here trying to figure out if we're gonna make $10 next week compared to the 15 we lost last week. You know, that's not what I do. So I'm willing to let y'all work through whatever it is that you think you need to work through. And I'll tell you one other thing. Solid waste has always been one where, and my feeling is that the Board of Commissioners has tried to manage. Now, we don't go down in the electric department. We don't go up in planning and zoning. We don't go down to public work. But we have always tried to manage solid waste. So I'm willing to ride with staff and the solid waste department to let them figure out what it is we need to do and where it is we need to go.
Can I say one thing?
Todd, come on up to the mic. You can come on up here.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Okay, when it comes to recycling, you don't look at it from a residential. Residential, that's not where you're going to make any money, because that's why a lot of municipalities did away with recycling all the way across the board. It's just not profitable. But with us, the cardboard is 95% coming from industrial areas. So they bring it to us, and as them bring it to us, we are able to bail it at no cost. As I said, we got the baler through a grant, so we don't have to worry about the baler. Only things that really costing us will be the manpower to bail it. And then if we get with the vendor that we're a preference, which I'm just, is they own the mill. So what we would do, we cut out the middleman. So there's no charging for them to bring us a trailer. There's no charging for them to take us to the mill. So what we get is pure profit. So don't look for residential. There's no market in residential recycling, really period, especially cardboard. What we have is industrial customers bringing us cardboard, or we pick it up out there, we bring it and we bale it. So you can't look at it from a residential standpoint, because really there's no market in residential recycling really across the board. Most municipalities do it because it's the green thing, it's the right thing to do, that's what their citizens want. But I talked to City of Atlanta, I talked to Cab, Athens, everybody is in the negative when it comes to recycling, but they're doing it because that's what their citizens want. So you can't look at it from we're going to make money. Yes, we can make revenue here because all we're doing is cardboard, and 95% of our cardboard is coming from the industrial area. I just wanted to have you to think about that.
And that's sort of why we're here with you at this point. It's a policy decision. If we can more than likely say that residential is not going to make money, it is going to lose. But the question becomes from a policy perspective, you all are elected by citizens who are going to call you when we say, give us your blue carts back or use it as a trash can, and they're going to have an opinion about that. So the question becomes for you all, for the policy setters, do you want to be a recycling city? Or do you want to say, we recycle from an industrial perspective and our residents are not required to do so, they can take it to a collection center if they want, which my recommendation at first would be the transfer station to see how it goes, because if we just start putting dumpsters all over the place, it doesn't matter that they're red and there's only one slot, you know what happens, people are going to dump right in front of it. And see what we get, but that's y'all's call as to what you want to be as the city of Griffin.
I like that option.
And also too, when it comes to recycling, we provide the carts at our cost. So
Yep.
citizens get free cart. We averaging about 400, 600 carts here that we're giving to citizens. So to think about as Griffin continues to grow with all these developments going out, now we got to give, that's free carts that we're giving out. So about 65, recycling cart costs us about $55 a cart, and of course the cost goes up. So we're doing that. I order about 2 or 3 loads per year at $200 to $300 per load, and we give them to the citizens at cost. I mean, at our cost, it's free. So you got to look at too that recycling is not being charged. You've been charged for the garbage. Recycling is picked up for free.
I prefer for us to focus on residential collection of solid waste, and we have some collection centers, 1, 2, whatever, where people can bring possibly aluminum cans. This is something the Environmental Council could partner with. You've got, I guess, at the county transfer stations, they've got recycling collection spots there. We pay the general fund to operate those. If there's a way to streamline what we're doing in terms of your division, Todd, and then possibly and I'm in favor right now to potentially look at us taking over yard waste to do it more effectively and efficiently. That's where me personally, I'm leaning to. I think we're wasting our citizens' hard-earned money driving a second route that's costing us a lot of money, in my opinion. But I can't. No one's been able to tell me what it's cost to run that route versus the collection.
What you from us a consensus about which way to go?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going with what you said.
But Todd said there's no money. There's no money in
There's no money in it.
There's no money in
Yeah.
recycling.
And that's what I said when I first came on.
It's a waste of
wasting them all.
energy.
What he said, what he said was, what Kelsey said was, no, there's not any money, but there's always been places where we didn't make money initially. But when we started with recycling before, it took us months and maybe years to educate our citizens as to how to or what we could recycle. And then after a certain length of time, it was like, okay, if you don't do it, we're not going to pick this up if you don't do it the way you're supposed to do it.
But
So-
there was a market for products at that time. We had cans, glass,
we
we had
don't
all
have-
the different things.
Well, I'm not talking
We
about
don't
cans and
now.
glass, because that ain't what she said. She said cardboard.
But we're not saying we still do commercial recycling, but we leave the residential and figure out if somebody wants to feel warm and fuzzy, then we have a place where they can take their cardboard and drop it off.
And I think we're open to either option at this point. My understanding was that from a policy perspective, we wanted recycling, and it's a matter of degree. So if that is not if that's not the will of the board and that needs to be modified, we can come up with a proposal for that. But when we were looking at recycling options, our main kind of idea going into it was that we wanted recycling. It was a matter of degree to that. So, what you collect residentially, you do have a minimum load requirement. That was actually a problem with our previous recycling, was that we could never meet the minimum load requirement, so we were paying sort of an overage with the company that we were with Sunoco, or an additional penalty.
Are you all asking us
We
if
got
you want us to
hard
get
now.
rid of one of our,
We need to know if you want curbside recycling for residential.
do you want us to get rid of one of our containers?
Yes, the blue cart, would that stay? And the staff's recommendation at this point is if it stays, it would only be corrugated cardboard.
Okay.
or it can go completely. What is our policy?
Mr. Todd, your recommendation on that?
Well, personally, I recommend getting rid of residential recycling. We can keep commercial because it's not
Okay.
a
What's the
cost to
savings
us.
to our constituents?
If that's what, if that's
We
your.
don't know. That's-
Personally,
that's
me,
what we
I would say
recommend.
get away with
They
residential
not
because,
gonna do
like
it.
you say,
It's
it's
not
no,
the cost of
excuse me, it's no money in it. We're providing the cards. Then if you continue to do it, then instead we keep, and then we gotta, then you gotta pay somebody to take it to the mill.
Okay,
That's-
so
I will
your
say-
recommendation is that,
My recommendation is get rid of residential recycling and you can keep commercial because
So
they bring
what-
us a cardboard.
When you say that, you're saying get rid of the blue
Yeah, pull the
container.
blue card, yeah.
I agree with you.
Recycling is no longer mandatory in the city of Griffin. They pull the
so
blue
if a
card.
residential customer has cardboard
We can take it.
and we don't have recycling, what they do, just put it in their regular trash can?
Like they're doing now for the last 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that's your.
If we have a place to collect it,
From-
that'd be great.
From you all's perspective, as elected officials, understand
Backlash.
that when we come back after
Oh,
a
yeah.
rate study and say that what they're paying now at $26 is going to go to 40 and they're losing a service, you're,
They're not losing a service, they're
Well, why is
just
it
losing
gonna
a
go
can.
$40 if we
Right.
can make money based on,
we don't make money now. You lose money every year.
I mean, right now, again, looking at Athens, Clark County, their
do they
minimum
privatize
service
it or are they to
No.
is,
internal?
their minimum
Internal.
service is, just, if I just go to their 96-gallon cart only, one 96-gallon cart is $44. So, and when you look at their dumpsters by comparison too, we're a third of where they are when it comes to commercial. So from a rate perspective, we are very behind, and there will have to be an increase. That is why
So I
Solid Waste is
understand
where
that,
they
so I'd
are.
like to take Todd's recommendation that we do away with residential recycling, and going into the budget year, when we start building our budget, we look at where our numbers need to be in terms of that potential savings. But I'd also like for us, since we're doing an RFP for for yard debris, whether it's worthwhile for us to consider
Yeah, we can do that.
doing that. So, because we've got our employees, we've got potential trucks, and see if it makes sense or not.
Okay.
I agree. I do have one question. So with Athens, Clark County, they're countywide, correct? And we're concerned with our city. So I understand their rate would probably come from all that they're taking in versus the operation and what it costs to run it and so forth with all the costs. So what you're saying is we will look at that, what it costs to run it, once the errors, and we might not be, I'm looking at, like the rate of silver or gold. It's not like that. It's based on the cost of running the operation. Ours may not be anywhere near 44, or it might, I don't know, but that's what you all are gonna figure out.
Yeah, what we, Kelsey was looking at is cost of service.
Cost of
When we set
service.
rates, we just say, okay, it's $23.
Right,
But within that $23, we're not considering the manpower,
okay.
the landfill costs, transfer station costs, the cost to maintain that equipment. So now we gotta look at all of that when we set a rate. Previously, all we doing is say, okay, $23, boom, but now we're not considering that, all those other 4 factors that go into making that collection.
And I'll be honest, I think where some of that comes from is that a lot of the private commercial collectors, I don't understand how they make money, but when they contract with municipalities, they're setting a flat rate across the board, residential, commercial, no matter what, of
Right.
$60 per quarter, so $20 a month, with like additional add-ons for each pickup service. It could be that they have a size advantage as far as the company itself, but I think that is part of where our rates came from, was thinking, well, if a private company can do this, then this should be our rate. But ultimately, the service that we're getting is holistic, and we don't have the option like those other private entities to say, we're not going to make any money out here, so we're not going to serve this area. They could refuse to come to my street if they're not going to make a profit on my street. We don't get to do that. So we have to take into account, it's actually, with Athens Clark, you've got a larger customer base, and in theory, a larger customer base would result in actually a potentially lower rate, only because you're doing more. It doesn't necessarily work that way for gas and other expenses, additional, wear and tear on your equipment, but we really do need to take a look at what the cost of providing this service is from a comprehensive perspective. But again, we can go either way. The understanding kind of going in was that we want to figure out a way to do recycling. And if this would, I think, be the only proposal that would allow us to do it at all, would just be going to the OCC.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I need a consensus to know that we are going to proceed with looking at removing the blue carts, the
Yep.
residential
Yes.
curbside recycling.
If that's Todd's recommendation.
And
Concur with
then
Ms.
also do a cost of service study, once we have the information that's correct in our system to be able to know what we are serving, as well as looking at combining the residential service as one whole thing, whether that's just garbage, yard waste, whatever, and then
Yes,
coming back
absolutely.
with that cost. We will also look at what that would be for the city to provide yard waste service and put out an RFP if needed for a contractor.
I
And
love
then
it.
also a convenient way for folks that do want to feel warm and fuzzy.
We'll
have a
look at where
place
we can
they
have residential
and
recycling
there may be
containers.
stuff already going on with the county transfer stations that we could piggyback on that since we're already paying general fund money to the county to operate those centers.
Well, they can go, that's the thing though, our citizens can go there now.
Right, I understand, but what's available? I think there's recycling options at the county transfer station, so there's, if you want to recycle,
You should be going there.
you should go there and
Right.
roll and go.
Yep.
With that being said, you will still likely see a recycling contract with that other contractor, just so that we can deal with the industrial.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
You know,
Great
that
job,
we're-
good
Yeah,
job,
great
Kelsey,
job.
good job.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, moving into item 2, discuss proposed personnel policy revisions. Human Resource Director Stephanie Woods and City Manager Jessica O'Connor will address.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Where's it at?
Good morning.
My God.
Pop test, pop quiz.
Oh, no, look at this pretty thing.
Isn't it pretty?
Yay.
What I have given you is our current personnel policy that is in place today. And so today we are going to be recommending some changes. There's nothing major I'm excited to announce, but there are a few things that we think that you should be aware of. This is on the agenda tonight. We are seeking to make it effective January 1st. So I'm going to walk you through some of those changes, and Ms. O'Connor is going to kind of help me out because we've kind of worked on it together because I was out last week. Why are we changing the personnel policy? Times change, laws change, people change, organizations change. The last time we revised the personnel policy was January 1st, 2024, and we have been revising it every 2 years. So now is the time for us to do that. And again, I've already said we are wanting to make it effective January 1st, 2026. So the big changes that we have, and the policy is broken up into articles. So we've listed every article here to kind of let you know what the change is. In Article 1, there are only really 2 changes, and the first one is differential pay. We adopted this in July 2025, but it wasn't actually in the policy, so we're adding that in, and that is where our non-public safety employees that work night shift from 8 p.m. to 6 p.m. or any portion of those hours in between.
6
they get
a.m. 6 a.m.
6 a.m., my apologies. They get $2 an hour for each hour. So this is your solid waste truck drivers at night, systems operations. That is what that is. Extended family, we learned that extended family is well, really extended. So we are changing that definition to just be first cousin instead of cousin. And where that comes into play is in our bereavement leave policy, which we'll get to in another article.
Okay.
Under our Equal Employment Opportunity, Article 2, there was information over a previous committee we had edit, and so we have removed that. Under Article 3, our new hire referral program, which I think is one of the best employee incentives for new hires I've ever seen. The plan we're not changing, but what is written in the policy is that the referring employee, they get a day off added to their time bank, And we're trying to get away from shifts because we have 12-hour, 10-hour, 9-hour, we have all these different shifts. So the proposed change is that if you've referred someone and they're hired, you get 8 hours added to your vacation bank. So it doesn't matter if you're what shift you work or how many hours. Under Article 4, Establishment of Positions, we did not have any changes. Under Article 5, General Employment Rules, we have added in a section of Code of Ethics for employees. It does correlate with appointed officials. Another big one that we've done is related to benefits, and 2 statements were added. In order to maintain benefits, an employee must work and/or use paid time off for a minimum of 30 hours each week. Those are rules of our pension plan. So our employees have to do that, but there are times we have employees who don't care if they don't get paid, they don't want to work, and so they're happy just working 2 days a week, which does not work for us either. So we're making it very clear that you have to either use your time off, and if you don't have the time off, then you don't get off. So unless there's a special medical leave of absence, something, obviously that's different, but we have that clearly stated so employees understand that.
You said Code of Ethics, is that an addition?
Yes, ma'am, it is an addition.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not currently in the personnel policy,
Okay.
so this is a new thing that we added, but
Okay.
appointed and elected officials have been subject to the Code of Ethics since we adopted that in the ordinance. People get confused as to what that means as far as an employee, so we did add the provision in this personnel policy to say what applies to an employee.
Okay.
Okay, the other thing we've listed in here is that receiving benefits when an employee is not or no longer eligible is a prohibited violation. And unfortunately, we had a case of that where an employee was receiving supplemental benefits when they were actually back at work. So that was a problem, so we've added that to the policy to make it very clear that is not accepted. Our smoking and tobacco surcharge we have had in place for many years, and that is to help reduce the healthcare expenses. So employees and spouses are each charged $18 if they use tobacco products. That's $18 per payroll. We are just proposing to also add that charge for dependent children, because we do carry dependent children up to the age of 26. And so if I have 5 children, that would just be one $18 charge for those children. It's not per child. And that would affect about, that's really only going to affect about 13 employees with dependents on the plan. Article 6, use of city assets. This section needed a little bit of work. So we broke it out into better sections, and it is very clear now what to do in the event of loss or damage to a city vehicle. Unfortunately, we have those. Expectations that an employee must notify the supervisor within 48 hours of any license status change. We just have to, if you're a commercial aid driver and your license is suspended or whatever, you can't be driving for us. So making it clear to employees, they have to let us know. When and under circumstances that there may be revocation of vehicle privileges, when we may take your vehicle away, if you have a take-home vehicle, we have the right to do that. It's a city vehicle, so that kind of breaks that out to give some examples of that. And then there's usage expectations of all city assets, which is very specific to employees, that it is yours. It's, you can't take that weed eater home for the weekend and use it. It's just clear what expectations are with that. And you would think people know, but we've seen some crazy things, so we like to address them.
Do we have that labeled specifically, no taking your children to daycare, or the big family dog can't be riding around in a city?
Yes, ma'am, we do.
It's all in.
We do, and they have to sign an agreement as well, and we're going to get updated agreements from everyone, because I have a feeling there are some we don't have.
Yeah,
But yes,
there's
it's
a
very
vehicle
clear.
usage policy that has to be signed, but there are exceptions to that. Incidental, for instance, y'all asked if I want a city vehicle. I said no, because I don't want to have to drive to Milner and mine, come back, go to my house, get a city vehicle, and come here, because that's not incidental to coming to work. But if their school was between my house and here, then we allow them to drop them off. So it's not, you can't just always black and white say you can't, but it's defined as to what's incidental to their commute versus stopping on the way home to the grocery store, fine. Going to Atlanta, the grocery store, to go to Whole Foods, no.
Right.
So,
And it has to be approved by their department director.
Okay, I was gonna
Or if
say
it's a
it's-
director, by the city manager
Right.
as well.
All right.
So, Article 7 is over drugs and alcohol. Unfortunately, we don't have anything to change with that. That policy is working very well. Article 8, safe workplace, we also did not have changes to. Article 9, travel expenses and reimbursements. We had the addition of a credit card policy thanks to Ms. Deborah Gilbert a couple years ago. So we've added a portion of that into the personnel policy, and it's clearly stated in there that you can reference the credit card policy. But we thought we want to try to make it as all-inclusive as we can. We also added a section on travel time for non-exempt employees to define how they are paid if they're traveling after hours. And there's federal law on that, Fair Labor Standards Act, but we needed that information in there because it does occasionally happen to a non-exempt employee. Under Article 10, we have added a statement under personnel records that GCIC information, which is Georgia crime information, on an employee is maintained separate of the personnel file. And that's something we learned very recently, and we've already removed all of those out of the employee files that we have now. And I know the police department accreditation is very happy about that. Article 11, payroll, we did not have any changes to. Article 12, separation, we added in this statement because we've had some confusion in several different cases. But the separation date is the last day physically worked by the employee, with the exception of an employee on family medical leave who does not return, or a termination approved by the city manager following a disciplinary conference. And so that just means if I resign today and I say that my last day work is going to be in 2 weeks, but I don't come back tomorrow and never come back, then today is considered my last day. It's not 2 weeks from now because I didn't work. So trying to just clean that up so folks understand that.
What about in the event of, let's say, a work comp claim and the person tries to get better but they don't come back? When would that date be then?
That would be under family medical leave, and so that is covered under Section 13, and so we obviously try to work with that person and get them back. But there have been times when someone has not been able to come back after 6 months, 7 months, and we've had to go on and replace them. So it's
Would that still be the last date they were here though? Or
no, that would be different. It would be based on, right, it would be based on, they're given notice in advance that, as of this date, we understand you still can't come back. We'll consider this your last day. So. Article 13, attendance and leave. This one is a really good one, I think. We currently have a cap on vacation where the carryover on December 31st is 120 hours. So on December 31st, if I have 140 vacation hours, when I wake up on January 1st, I forfeited 20 vacation hours because we have that cap. And we kind of felt like this was a punishment to employees who sometimes can't take vacation because of our staffing. So we are proposing to move that carryover up to 200 hours. We also have a sick bonus program incentive that is currently in place. We are proposing to remove that because we have changed our performance evaluation process to where attendance and leave counts towards it is still 50% of the performance evaluation, but it's managed differently. Ms. O'Connor, I'll let you take that one.
So 15% of the performance evaluation, but we're not, so what we learned over the last couple of years is that a lot of our employees enjoy our benefits, whether that's vacation, sick, holiday, the pension, but in our performance evaluation, we were sort of deducting points for them if they actually took that sick leave. Well, I can't in one breath say it's an incentive for you to work here because we do give you sick leave, and at the same time penalize them monetarily for taking it. Mm-hmm. So instead, we're taking money away from sick leave, but that also meant we had to remove the incentive because one of the arguments was, well, you're encouraging me to come to work, so I don't get a 1 on this section of my evaluation. You're encouraging me to come to work sick because I don't want to get a 1, but also I'm encouraging you to come to work sick if I leave in the sick bonus program so that you get a bonus at the end of the year. So we're just removing any kind of monetary relationship between sick leave and money.
That doesn't mean we don't expect our employees to come to work, and right. We are going to address it with disciplinary measures if there's a problem of attendance and tardiness, which we have at times. Our next one, we've talked a lot about holiday pay. We've got several different shifts from 10 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours. And the workplace is changing a lot. You know, we're trying to find that perfect work-life balance, and it's different for different departments. So we've talked a lot about holiday pay. Where it is in the policy that is on the agenda that we're making changes to it, but we have decided not to at this time. We really need to explore that further and get information from a whole lot of people internally so we make the right decision.
Yeah, so if you have heard from people, and I did let the employees know, we're going to put together a group of different employees. So our 20/80 hours, which is somebody like me, I get 8 hours of vacation or holiday leave for every holiday. But some of our 12-hour employees get 12 hours and they get a bank and they get it up front and they don't have to take Veterans Day on Veterans Day. They can take it whenever, and 24 hours get 24 hours. And what we learned is that a lot of times they're not even working that holiday, but they're getting triple what I would get, which our 20/80 hours employees say, well, that's not fair. Probably not, but we also have 10-hour shifts that if you're a police officer and you work 10-hour shift, you're going to get 10 hours of holiday, but if you're a 20/80 employee working a 10-hour shift, you're going to get 8 hours. Well, that's not fair. So what is fair, though? Again, that's one of those benefits that, you know, we don't pay as much as Fayetteville when it comes to fire, but they get that extra benefit of having additional holiday. So what do we do? And I think it's important for the employees to understand the difference between each other, to understand how we best make a policy for 500 employees, that almost all of which are different. So we're going to put a pin in that. You did see it on the agenda with that proposal, but we're going to ask you tonight to approve the personnel policy without that change. And then we'll come back after talking with everybody next year and making that effective January 1, because the other problem with holiday is if you change, like even from a criminal investigations police officer to a uniform patrol police officer to a traffic unit police officer, they all work different hours, and they all take holidays differently. And so even moving around in one department changes what HR has to do from an administrative perspective, so it's much easier to start that January 1. So while I think we will come up with a better proposal probably within a few months, we want to make that effective January 1 and not create such an administrative nightmare on taking back holiday hours and all of those kind of things. So we're going to ask to do what we need to do as far as the 2-year personnel policy revision, but we're going to hold the holiday pay until next year.
Okay.
And if you want to know how the holiday pay currently reads, that's why I gave you a copy of the current policy, and it's on page 52. So it will say that moving forward as well. We also have a change, again, in shifts to hours that affects bereavement leave. And again, we're trying to just get some consistency. The definition of immediate family is stated in the definition section in Article 1. This is just kind of a reminder here that that is the employee's spouse, child, stepchild, legal ward, etc., and parent. And that is the legal definition by federal law, federal family medical leave, of what immediate family is, okay? But for bereavement purpose, we are adding some other folks to that for the purposes of what we give them for bereavement. So to immediate family for bereavement, we're also adding parent-in-law, sibling, half or step sibling, son or daughter-in-law, grandparent or grandchild. That's all the same. That has not changed. What has changed is that previously we were given 3 days off for bereavement leave. So it didn't matter if I'm a firefighter working 24 hours or if I'm Stephanie working 8 hours. You got 3 days. Well, that means different things to different people. So now we're going with hours. So no matter if you're that firefighter, if you're Stephanie, you get 40 hours in the event of immediate family death. And that is a little bit more generous than what we had. And we talked about it. I mean, if I lose a parent, a child, I mean, there's no way I'm going to make it back to work in 3 days. No. And ideally, most folks would need a whole lot of time, but we wanted to at least give them a week for that. For extended family, and that definition is not changing. We were giving 1 day, and now we are changing that to 16 hours. So that's a little bit more generous too, if you're a 20/80 employee. But that also makes it better for staffing. So like for a firefighter, what that means for them is I work a 24-hour shift, so I'll have 16 hours of bereavement leave, and then for that other 8 hours, I'll take vacation, I'll have to work that out, or I may come in. It depends. So it's going to vary. Article 14, I'm real happy with this one. investigation of employee misconduct, administrative leave, now being employee conduct. Previously, this article had no sections in it. It was just 1 or 1.5 pages. So now it's better defined by section. So it clearly states when an investigation will occur, how you make a complaint, what dissolution is, what administrative leave is, and what expectations are of both the city and the employee as far as time constraints. So the investigation defines who will investigate alleged charges. And it depends, that's an attorney answer, but it depends based on who brings the complaint forward. And it's also clear in there that there is a chain of command. However, there are times that you may not be able to go to your chain of command. If you're alleging misconduct against your supervisor, you're not going to be able to go to that supervisor. So it clearly states who you can go to in a matter like that. The complaint also states examples of unwelcome conduct that could have an adverse effect on an employee and the process by which they complain. And then if they're not happy, it's a chain of command. And if they're not happy with the outcome, then it goes to the next level and then the next level. And all of this is documented and kept, so we have it moving forward. There's a dissolution that states time limit requirements for both the city and the complainant as well. And I will say, in the complaint process, the final step, if I'm still the employee and I'm not happy after it's been looked at by my supervisor, my department director, my HR director, that the final decision is very clear that it's city manager. So that's clear in there as well too. Administrative leave, we did not change. We just made it where it read a little bit better. And we listed expectations and stated consequences of actions or inactions. So if you're a witness in an investigation and we come to talk to you, then we expect you to talk to us. So that's very clear. Obviously not breaking any laws or anything legal, but that's stated in there. Article 15, disciplinary actions. Although we use probation as a measure, it wasn't listed in the section that we do, so we've added that in. The Personnel Review Board and the board approves that, as we have to update that board when we have an alleged or when we have someone seeking an appeal to the board. Currently that has a pool of 6 members. We found out during our last Personnel Review Board that just wasn't enough to choose from. It's very hard to get 3 people's schedules together. So we're raising that to 8. And we are also making it clear that if you're going this route and making an appeal to the Personnel Review Board, that it is a public evidentiary hearing, and some people don't realize that. So we want them to understand it is an open meeting. And I think that dissuades some and not others, but it was important for them to understand that. Under Article 16, that was grievance. This section was very similar to employee misconduct. It did not have sections, and it reads a lot like employee misconduct, but a grievance is different. That's when I believe something in the workplace is unfair. So this defines how you file a grievance, what a grievance is not, how I file a complaint, the steps that there is with that, and it's the same similar steps as if an employee misconduct allegation. Dissolution requirements are the same, and then ultimately, once you go through the chain of command and all the steps, again, the city manager has the final determination. Article 17, career planning and professional development. Our career planning process was recently updated, which is much more clear. I think our employees are pleased with it, and I think it's going to be a great tool for supervisors, but we needed to update that in the personnel policy, which we have done. Our next sections, employee privacy in the workplace, acceptable use, which are use of computers, social media, and employee recognition, we did not have changes to. And Article 22, just implementation of policy, we are seeking to make these changes effective January 1st, 2026. So it will be on the agenda tonight for approval, so we can get it printed in time and distributed to our employees and give them some training about what the changes are. I think they'll be pleased that there's not any major changes. We might have found a few grammatical errors or spelling issues that we've cleaned up also. Any questions? Yes, sir.
The policy for 16 hours on extended family leave and expecting a fireman to come in 8 hours of the day. Why don't we just call it a day is a day?
Because we can't, because everybody's day is different now.
Well, I
We've
realize
got
that.
too many shifts, so you've got
I
9 hour,
realize
10
that,
hour,
but
8 hour
on
days.
this rare occurrence when he's gonna have that, just call a day as a day. Don't expect the guy or the girl to come in 8 hours, because they're scheduled for 24, and we only give them 16. Just call a day as a day.
Well, they can use vacation time to supplement the
How
difference.
many hours are we gonna use a year?
Unfortunately,
Unfortunately, it's a lot.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I think that changing the definition to first cousin rather than cousin will help with that. But we've had a lot of people that have abused that, I'll just be frank. They have said, this is very important to me, I can't believe I'm gonna miss this. But when we say, well, you don't have to, you can take your other leave, because you have other leave options, then it's all of a sudden not that important. So it's, and not that fire has done that, but, you know, it's just,
Well, that's the only department, we have 24-hour shift, right?
yes.
But they also have flex time in place, which is a day that they can use incrementally for an event like this or a doctor appointment. So they have that, and no other department does.
Where they could take 8 hours to go to the funeral, they could take 8 hours the day before to help with whatever, or go to visitation, but they still work some of their shift as well. So they have a little bit more flex than me taking 8 hours or a non-exempt in 20-80 hour position.
Any other
This is
questions?
tonight.
Great.
We vote on it tonight.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about childbirth in this one?
We are not talking about childbirth.
No.
We all remember that very well.
Yeah, I'm still traumatized.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
I had
you.
some education on that day. All right, if we're ready to move in, consider executive session pursuant to ACG section 5143B2 for the purpose of discussing or deliberating upon the appointment, employment, compensation, hiring, disciplinary action, or dismissal, or periodic evaluation or rating of public officers or employees, and pursuant to OCGA section 501421 for the purpose of consulting and meeting with legal counsel pertaining to pending or potential litigation, settlement claims, administrative proceedings, and other judicial actions brought or to be brought by or against the agency or any officer or employee, or in which the agency or any officer or employee may be directly involved. We got a motion by Commissioner Tinsley, second by Murray. All in favor? Please join us.
Let's take about 2 minutes.
Oh, my God.
Let us stretch just a minute. Hey, I hate we didn't get to talk about.
No. Stop now.
Thank y'all so much.
Yes, sir, thank you. So that's started, January.
January 1st, so it's not gonna happen before the first.
I'm just saying start, I mean, next year, I got a lot of people.
There you go. You wanna lose it? And then everybody wants
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Cindy, what time are they gonna, do the, tape calls and stuff at?
Before you get here, what time you get here?
I'm probably gonna be here about 3, maybe about between 3 and 3:30.
Okay.
What time I
Commissioner
need to
Curtis
come and
made a
sample?
motion, seconded by Commissioner Murray, to come back into executive session.
Appreciate your work, Mr. Wayne.
Somebody kill them.
That's what I said.
I've had a headache all day
I'm
today.
supposed to be there for 30 minutes.
I know it. Oh, yeah.
Get your wife and your boy dinner.
It's almost 12 o'clock.
Yeah, I got to go.
I got the tab outside.
The tabs are feet on floor.
Did you send it to me, Mr. Connor?
I screenshot and sent you a text.
Late night, and then, doesn't have an ear infection, she's got fluid down her ear, no through
Okay.
sinuses, so.
I've
Okay,
got
we
it.
back out for session. We come,
use
we
her
both
phone.
come back out for
Just a second.
session.
Well done.
I'm still waiting for the text to come through.
Just get her phone,
I had a rough night
rock
last
and
night.
roll.
Maybe you can go home and take a quick snooze.
Got to the store, I had to get some things.
All right.
I got
We have a motion to make an executive session.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Ward, second by Commissioner Murray. All in favor, signal by raising your hand. 7-0. We have a motion to amend the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion from Commissioner Tinsley.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Murray. All in favor, please signal by raising your hand. All right. Amend the agenda to add, make a motion to amend the agenda to consider the approval of the proposal presented for the city manager and allow the mayor to execute the contract related to same, and make a motion to, so we have that motion. Do we have
So moved.
we have a motion from Commissioner Ward, second by
Second.
Commissioner Tinsley. All in favor, please signal by raising your hand.
And that's effective January 1st, 2026
Okay.
through January
So-
27th, or excuse me,
Yep.
December 31st of 2027. So
2027,
two-year-
correct. All in favor, please signal by raising your hand.
Or say aye.
7-0. And then need to make a motion to approve the proposal presented for the city manager to, and allow the mayor to execute the contract related to same. We have a motion to approve the
Make a
motion. Motion by Commissioner Murray, second by Commissioner Tinsley. Any discussion? All in favor, please signal by raising your hand.
Or say aye.
7-0. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Adjourned by Commissioner Moore.
Recording
Commissioner
stopped.
McCord, second by
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wright. All in favor, please signal by raising your hand. 7-0.
Where the keys at?